Now for a quick update on what's happened to this car since I bought it in late 2022. Hello and welcome back to the Volks Wizard channel. Now if there's one model of car I can blame for me starting Volks Wizard back in the 1990s, it is the Mk2 Golf GTI. One of these was my third car after a Red Van Polo and a Mk2 Golf CL, and it was a car that I got into buying and selling as a hobby in the 90s that led to it becoming a full-time job in 2002. And yet, for all the Mk2 Golf GTI's significance to me, it took me a long time to realise that I wanted to buy one for my own personal delectation. And when I decided I wanted to do this, well, they become very expensive, and as with most cars, as they get older, the condition goes downhill. So I put it on the back burner until I was offered a car I'd sold to the owner in 2004, which is this car. It was the right spec and condition, and I introduced it to the channel in December 2022. I did a few jobs on the car, which led to videos that were posted in early 2023. I'll put a link to the playlist in the description of this video. But for well over a year, this car has not appeared on the channel, and yet some work has been done to it. So in today's video, I'm going to bring you up to speed on my Mk2 Golf GTI 8-valve and share with you my future plans for it. But before we get started, let me just remind you guys how you can support the channel. The easiest way to do that, as ever, is simply to subscribe. Big thanks to every single one of my 57,000 current subscribers. You all mean an awful lot to me, but if you haven't subscribed yet and you like what you see, then I'm sure you know what to do by now. Another way to support the channel is to visit the Deutsche Parts website. They've been going for many years. They've got a very high level of customer service, as their Google reviews confirm, and as well as having a very wide selection of modern Volkswagen Group parts, they've also got a very good selection of classic parts, including lots of things for the Mk2 Golf you probably won't be able to find elsewhere, and they're all available for next day delivery in the UK and also around the world. So support the channel and please check out the Deutsche Parts website. Okay, now for a quick update on what's happened to this car since I bought it in late 2022. So I think in early 23, I fitted the Blaupunkt Bremen DAB stereo. So it looks like a really old Bremen from the 1980s or 90s, but it's got DAB, it's got USB input and other modern things. Obviously, it doesn't have CarPlay because it hasn't got a big screen, but it's pretty much everything else that a modern stereo would have. I fitted the electric aerial made by Hirschmann, and I fitted the Milltek Classic exhaust. All these mods actually worked out better than expected, particularly the Milltek, because it replaced a boomy aftermarket system with this much more tuneful one that always takes me back to the 1990s with its very OEM type burble. After that, I think the car never appeared on the channel again, and in the spring, when the weather got better, a bit like now, I took it around Warwickshire for 3 bodywork quotes. They varied from £1,800 to 3,800, so more than double. And it was only the more expensive company that I really trusted, but then that was a lot of money to spend on the bodywork, and I can't garage the car, so I ended up not doing anything, and the car pretty much just sat around from then on. One job I did do, though, was I'd sourced a new back seat, complete in the right fabric, because the original one was fag burned. So I swapped that and then sold the original fabric on eBay for for repairs to bolsters on the front seats of other cars. I think I got my money back pretty much doing it that way around. The MOT expired in October, so I got pretty much a year when I bought it. And that bugs me when a car's not got an MOT, but it was winter and I just wasn't motivated. In January, I was motivated though, because at the time I thought I was going to drive it to Wolfsburg in July for the GTI Coming Home event, but then I thought I'll take the Club Sport S, and then I saw the prices for tickets and things you can do at the show, and I actually decided it looks more like a corporate event rather than an enthusiast thing. Volkswagen do it to make money and to push their electric cars, and I really kind of went off the idea then. However, I can spend the money I'm not going to spend going there on the car. Okay, so in January I was still motivated and I wanted to get it MOT'd, and I didn't want it to fail, so to reduce the risk of that, I took all the wheels off and cleaned up all the pads and calipers and sliders, so the pads were moving nice and freely. A problem with this car since I bought it was that it would lock a back wheel up and you'd have to put opposite lock on to keep the car in a straight line. Very, very dangerous. And I figured that would fail the MOT because of brake imbalance. I had a look at the brake pressure compensator, and that distributes the braking force to the rear wheels based upon how much weight is in the car and how low the car sits. I didn't expect it to be seized up because when I bought it, it had only been 2 months after it had been MOT'd. That's enough time for it to seize up. It's quite a damp period. And yeah, I got it working, and the braking on the way to the MOT, that's the only time I could test it legally because it didn't have an MOT, seemed a lot better, and it did pass the MOT. Only downside was when I took the wheels off, I found the near side front CV boot was split. I don't think I've ever done a CV boot on a Mk2 Golf because they were so good back in the day when I used to sell them. The boot from Euro Car Parts, I think, was like under a tenner. Then, when doing that job, I could smell petrol. Now, these aren't catalyst cars, so they do chuck a bit of petrol out their exhaust, but this was a bit more, but I couldn't really see anything, so I didn't really think about it. However, when I moved the car, it had rained, and there was a rainbow pattern on the floor from fuel. It's a bit like the oil one, but not as obvious, and it was running from where I'd parked the car, where I'd worked on the car, to where I parked it, so it clearly had a leak underneath it. I got looking underneath it, and blimey, it was gushing petrol out from the flexible hose that sits on the fuel pump underneath the car by the rear axle. A close look at that was split. I think this was the night before the MOT, so I rummaged through my boxes, found some fuel line, put it on with some Jubilee clips, which aren't ideal, so they need to be changed, which we're going to do later on today. And amazingly, it passed its MOT. There was a problem with the horn, which the tester fixed, retested it, and it passed. The only advisory was a damaged near rear number plate, and that's only on there because I haven't had the car painted yet. About a year ago, I bought some retro plates with the original dealer name on them. So yeah, overall, the MOT tester was impressed with its solidity, so it's definitely a car worth investing in. Now, before I share with you my future plans for the car, which we'll do during the test drive, there's a couple of jobs I want to do right now. The first one is to try and locate a brake fluid leak, which this car has suffered with since I bought it. You may remember the handbrake warning light was on, and I thought it was a handbrake switch. It turns out that is actually a warning for low brake fluid. Thank you to whoever told me about that in the comments section over a year ago. Well, when I stripped the brakes before the MOT, I did notice some brake fluid around the piston of the offside front caliper. So today we're going to strip that and just make sure that's where the leak is, and then order a caliper to be fitted in a later video. Also, when I replace the fuse hose, I just use some Jubilee clips, which are not really designed for fuel hoses. So I've now got the correct fuel clips, and we're going to fit those as well. Okay, now we're going to get the offside front caliper off to just check if there's any evidence of brake fluid around the piston, which I did notice before the MOT, but I cleaned it off just so it wouldn't fail the MOT because of that, and knowing that I would have to do it later on. It's not something you can put off this job. If you're going to drive this car, you need to sort this out, because brake fluid is very important. So let's just get a 6mm Allen key onto the caliper retaining bolts. Okay, well, that's actually pretty dry at the moment. So I'm going to put it back on to the hub and just operate the brake pedal a few times. Just getting the engine running to get the servo working so we get maximum brake pressure. As you can hear, it sounds perfect. It's holding a pedal which would suggest no leaks, but over time the reservoir definitely does empty. Okay, back to the caliper then, and no, still bone dry. It's not impossible that when I took the pads out, probably pushed the piston back in to clean off the sliders, it might have reseated the seal and stopped the leak. So I'll just have to drive the car and keep an eye on that brake fluid level warning, which is the handbrake switch. If it starts to flicker, we know it's going low, and if it stays on all the time with the handbrake off, you know it's dangerously low. So it does give you forewarning. You just have to know what it means. It's not exactly clear, and it's so important. So yeah, we'll put this back together, and now we'll move on to the fuel hose clips. Well, welcome to the underside of my Mk2 Golf GTI. And it was while doing this job in January before the MOT when I realised actually how beautiful the sills were. It's remarkable, but I think it's partly to do with it having been a London car. It doesn't see an awful lot of grit in London, but they do tend to get damage through parking and stuff. They do tend to have a bit of paintwork. Now, there's a big rubber hose on the back, which you may or may not be able to see. That's actually okay. Just this little one that must be about 6 inches long. We need to replace both of these clips because they're just not up to the job. Now I've run the engine with the fuel pump relay unplug just to try and empty the fuel system as much as possible, but I don't have much confidence that's going to work. So there's going to be some spillage, no doubt. Okay, it's not too bad. Right, and then this rear one is attached to a pipe, a rigid plastic pipe. Just do that a bit more. I've just popped the pipe out of its holder, just give me a bit more room. That's better. Okay, so yeah, these Jubilee clips, they're not even particularly good Jubilee clips. That's not a bad one. But this is a cheap one that, the kind of ones that when you tighten them up, they just start to slip. So they don't really fill you with much confidence. And these are the proper fuel ones, so they're much more secure. That's good. Okay, you don't want to go too tight because you're just distorting the plastic. And then now for the second one, which goes onto the fuel filter. So let's just pop the plastic pipe in position, like so. And then that's it. can do wrong. Okay. Okay, again, don't over tighten it. All right, I'm happy with that, but I'm not completely happy until I've started the engine and checked for leaks. So let's do that now. Putting the relay back in. Give it a little bit longer. Sometimes it can take a bit of time to start leaking. No, we're happy. Job of the good one. Now, time for a cigarette. Okay, now let's talk about my plans with this car. Firstly, I need to point out I have no intention of selling it. It's taken me a long time to buy a Mk2, and this was quite a lucky purchase. I don't think I'll be as lucky ever again, so it's not going to be for sale. Obviously the bodywork is the elephant in the room. I don't want to make the mistake I did with the Corrado and make it too perfect to drive. That's been sold now, by the way, which frees up a bit of money to spend on this car. So if you know of a good body shop, or you work in a good body shop that might want to do this kind of work, maybe we can make some videos showing your skills, and maybe you can give me a bit of a trade discount in exchange. I'm definitely not expecting anything for free. If that sounds good and you're somewhere not too far away from sort of Warwickshire, maybe on the M40 corridor between Oxford and Birmingham, so Warwick, Leamington, Banbury, Bicester, Brackley, then get in touch. Email me directly, andrew@volkswizard.co.uk. Before the bodywork gets done though, I really want to take apart the front end of this Mk2, because unlike a Mark 1, you can just unbolt everything and have the wings just sitting there like that, and then with all those bits taken off, I can get them powder coated and make them look like new, and while they're away I can then tidy up all the bits I can't normally get to, like, you know, the block or the alternator or the starter motor, which is a bit noisy actually at the moment, so it might need a little bit of work beyond cosmetic refreshment. In the more immediate future though, I think I need to replace the front brake discs and pads. They passed an MOT with no advisories, which is great, but they look a bit rusty and they can't be working as good as a new set could. And with a car like this, where there's no real crush structure and lots of big SUVs to drive into you, I think your brakes need to be as good as possible. So yeah, that'll probably be the next episode on this car. But if you've got any questions about buying a Mk2, then get in touch. They're a great car, but it's a bit of a minefield out there, and I'm very happy to appraise any cars you might be considering buying by looking at their photos in the advert. You can often tell a lot from that, enough to put you off. Obviously, if you get past that phase, then a physical inspection by a specialist is always a good idea, but quite often cars I see, I never get beyond that point. As ever guys, thank you for watching this Volkswizard video. Keep subscribing, keep commenting, and I'll see you for the next one very soon.